What's up, Miniatures Paintbrush Legion, and welcome to another episode of Painting Tutorials. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're painting up one of the most infamous creations in all of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, the Skaven Stormfiends. These stitched together shock troops represent the unholy partnership between Clan Moulder, biological horrors, and Clan Skyre's dangerous experimental weaponry. And throughout this painting session, I'll cover everything from full lore breakdowns, gameplay analysis, tactical deep dives, as well as hobby advice along the way. So relax, pick up your hobby brushes, and join me in the depths of the Under Empire. Alright, starting out with Warscroll Red for the base tone for the flesh. And while I apply this, let's talk a little bit about the subject matter. The creation of the Stormfiends, a little bit of lore here. Stormfiends were developed when Clan Skyre, masters of warp technology, what that means, approached Clan Moulder, the creators of rat ogres and biological nightmares. Rat ogres, while brutal, were unpredictable and limited. Clan Skyre proposed a hybrid creation, a creature combining brute muscle with fully integrated weapon systems. Stormfiends are grown in fleshy incubation vats. Their bodies are stitched together using muscle tissue harvested from experimental creatures. Their skeletal frames are reinforced with metal. Their minds are flitted with neural control mesh. So instead of a natural brain, a Stormfiend is operated by a minder rat. You'll see that on the back of this model, the minder rats, which is a smaller Skaven that is wired directly into its nervous system. This minder rat sends impulses and commands directly to the Stormfiend and controls it like a puppet. We're now including a little bit of bone, Vallejo bone color, to our red Warscroll Red. And what we're doing is slowly creating highlights, just laying down where the volumes are of each muscle and trying not to create a muscle island. At first, it's going to look that way, but we're going to blend that in later on. And that's all it is. I like to mix paint. I just don't use one paint for everything because I have so many paints. It would take me forever to even find the paint that's right. I know, I'm a bit lazy like that sometimes, but it's so easy to mix paint. You just take one paint to another and you come up with a hybrid. And you choose the color you want. A little too light, a little too dark. The more you play with it, the better you actually get at deciphering what colors to mix. So let's get back to that lore. Think about it. There's this little rat on the back that is actually controlling this big beast called a minder rat. But unfortunately for the minder rat, the feedback and strain often results in a very short lifespan. The results of these horrific experiments is a towering brute capable of wielding some of the most powerful destructive Skaven weaponry ever created. And that is just epic. The understanding the Stormfiend means understanding the uneasy alliance between Clan Skyre and Clan Moulder. How they just attach weaponry to things. It really does remind me a little bit of the orcs in 40k, where they just fleshcraft and they throw things on and it kind of works. And then there's these like vats of poison that's getting pumped into them. So it kind of reminds me of the Drukhari a little bit. These guys are definitely It's out there, you know. It is so many references that I can see, or so many, I guess, lines of similarities that I can see. Makes it fun and exciting for me to paint. See, the thing about Clan Scryer and Clan Mulder, though, Clan Mulder believes its strength comes from flesh, and Clan Scryer believes the strength comes from warpstone-powered machinery. Each clan distrusts each other, but both crave power and influence. When they cooperate, the results are absolutely devastating. These are Skaven after all, so it's very rare when they cooperate. But they did on this one. Alright, next up we're going to go with the airbrush, and we're doing Vallejo Flesh over top, doing a zenithal for the skin, just getting the highlights where I want them. See, I like to use a combination of airbrush and brush sometimes. So this is just an easy way to build transition and smooth transitions throughout, and give you an idea where the light is coming from. Also, it takes a lot less time. I can dry brush this, but it takes a lot less time to do it this way. You do have to clean the airbrush, and there is a lot to it. But once you get the airbrush sorted out, it's so easy just to lay down some skin. And I'm just showing you how I'm doing it right now. Very zenithal, right over that Wazdaka red. And that really just brings out the muscles and the highlights where the light would hit it. Very, very easy to do a zenithal highlight if you own an airbrush. And if you don't own an airbrush, the one I'm using right now, I'm actually, it's up for grabs, I guess. I can do a, either a giveaway, or maybe I'll put it on the market. I don't know. Right now I'm using a couple of other airbrushes, and I do like to go from airbrush to airbrush. I do like when other technologies come out. I do kind of wear the seals thin, so I believe it needs a rubber seal. That's about it. I can even send the rubber seal, or maybe I can do something about that. With this one, it's an Iwata Eclipse. Very good airbrush if you're going for airbrushes. So where was I? Oh, yeah. So despite the rivalry between Clan Skyer and Clan Mulder, and I'm sorry, I sidetracked there. Despite the rivalry, both clans benefit. Mulder gets to create stronger monsters, and Scryer gets a living platforms for their weaponry. So there's that. A little Serapon Sepia on the bottom, simply just to coat it in a little bit of grime, a little more. I wanted to put brown in there. Brown is a very neutral tone and pretty natural, and I wanted to know that the ground was reflecting up. So a reverse zenithal, I forgot what was that called. From the bottom up really quickly, does the job well. So these are all the base coats and highlights, and I applied them throughout. Flesh works well in pale and bruised shades with hints of purple and gray that I'm going to show you how I do now. Actually, to make the skin feel like it's rotting. Pretty interesting. Reverse zenithals are pretty easy to do. It's quite what it says on the tin, and I like using shades this way because they build up slowly, and I could just knob it back and slowly tint it a little darker. The shades are absolutely phenomenal when it comes to that. Do love airbrush for that purpose. However, I need to practice more, and I usually do, just getting the paint on and doing it with a paintbrush. I'm still perfecting my way, and not really perfecting. I'm still trying to improve my way of getting some of these values in with an airbrush. Alrighty, picking up another one over here. Time for my wet palette. You see a wet palette over there? It's going to look like a Pollock painting after a while. It's going to have a lot of little paints on it. Okay, next up, what I take is the Army Painter Ruddy Fur. And what I'm trying to do is just get in like leather parts and dilute it a little more for the fur parts on the skin. I use dual purpose. The dilution changed the intensity of the color, making it look like two different colors. So I can differentiate the fur from the leather simply by diluting the paint. So this way it looks lighter. Very simple effect. And it is very, very successful. You know, getting an opportunity to paint this project has been really satisfying simply because I never thought I would be able to finish this project. Because when I look at the box, and this is, 85 miniatures, that's 85 miniatures. And you can say, yes, Skaven paint up quickly. I suppose that is very, very true. But it's still quite daunting. Some Druchii Violet now that I spilt. Oh my gosh. Yes, I am a victim of shade, and shade is getting harder and harder to come by. All right, so we're going to get into the skin, and we're going to do some bruising here. So we're going to get some purple and just dabbing it around the stitching, looking like the skin is almost necrotic or falling apart or, wasting away. Using that Druchii Violet, well, at least I'm going to get to use that while it's getting absorbed by my poor painting surface. These shades are harder and harder to come by these days. So, spelling one, who am I talking about? I have like 3 or 4 of them back up. But still, they're going to run out eventually, right? And also, I don't like wasting. I hate wasting. So, there it is. Just dabbing it with the tip of my brush. I'm getting better, and I've noticed that a lot of artists, they just use the very, very tip of the brush. And their brush control is so that they retract the brush just by gently almost not touching the surface that they're painting on. I need to get better at that skill right there. I think I would improve by leaps and bounds if I did that. And you can join me on this journey. All right, next up, we're going to do this with Balthazar Gold. Oh, yeah. And I mix a little Balthazar Gold. Sometimes I mix a little bit of dark aluminum in there just to give it like almost like a swirly, metallurgic kind of look to it. But this color right here, this Balthazar Gold, it is so red and the coverage is spot on. Now, I was going to do non-metallic metal with a metallic metal surface. However, I went the lazy route. But you can get like a lighter silver and just touch the edges of everything and really make it glow. I believe that I don't have any rear view mirrors, and hindsight is 2020. So if you want to add some detail to it, take something chromatic, anything chrome, and just do gentle taps or even dry brush it on top of the metal after you do Balthazar Gold, and it'll really pop. Now, I'm not upset with the way this came out, not at all, but that's certainly a direction that you may want to head when you're painting this miniature. As you can see, this is a slow-going process. I like to take my time simply because the skin is already done, and I am just entering a phase of almost cathartic joy where I'm just painting these, and this is the only thing that exists in the world for me. Do you get into a zen when you paint miniatures? Okay, next up, here comes the major winner of this, the base coat extraordinaire for this, after I do the skin and everything else, and of course the metal, is Caliban Green. I have fallen in love with Caliban Green. I don't know, I've never really used it before I started painting Dark Angels, and ever since then, oh my goodness, what a lovely color, and how it applies. Oh, it applies so well. Now with these little tubes here, I was going to paint the metal and make it easy for myself, but I figured contrast was in order. And what I mean by contrast is painting these tanks almost like they're translucent and there's some like poisonous liquid inside. I don't know. I was just having some fun. These miniatures were painted up for a D&D session. I've never played Skaven before. And I think that I will start playing Skaven simply because I have a couple of boxes of Skaven now waiting in the wings. I just got the Christmas box as well. It is on the way, and I'm very happy about that. I am a bit of a plasticaholic. I know I have a terrible, terrible, terrible backlog. Alrighty, so, and with my backlog comes more projects and more fun. Sometimes I wonder to myself, Rob, why are you Xanatholing priming this coat when you're just going to prime it over again? This time, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to try a gradient from top to bottom, being the bottom a little glowy and the top that Caliban green. How I'm going to do this transition? Well, I'm going to have a little bit of Warpstone glow and just a drop of Dowler and Rowney FW acrylic artist ink, and the color is emerald green. Just a little drop of that, and I'm just bringing up the color, making a little bit lighter, bringing that little highlight in there. Now, it looks fabulous when wet, but some of these paints, when wet, look amazing, and when dry, you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to go over that again, which is fine. This is a very slow process, and it's meant to be very relaxing. But you see, I'm not being so careful with my brushes, and you see that I'm not using an expensive brush for most of this project. This is just a fun little project that I wanted to do, and I don't know, I'm starting to like the Skaven. I don't think I'm painting it to a super high quality, but definitely if I put it on the game table, it's going to look impressive, across the field for the battle. And I mean, that's what I want. I want to go into a game store, and I do it for the adulations, I guess. The oohs and ahs, check this out. That looks painted amazing. I am still learning how to play Age of Sigmar. I played a couple of games at Age of Sigmar and in the past, and I'm still learning how to play Age of Sigmar very, very well. I mean, I can play and lose. And I read my codexes. Codexi? I don't know. I have a lot of them. Or in this case, battle tomes. But yeah, I know what they can do. But, being a great strategist is not my forte. But you know what? Somebody has to lose the game. I'll be the loser until I win one, right? And then come at it at a different way or a force. I'm going to check out AOS reminders. I haven't been on there for a while. That'll help me or guide me. Goonhammer puts out some stuff as well. And, just little reminders for each phase and what you do so you don't forget how to, play efficiently without forgetting something, because it always feels bad when you have everything there and knowing that you could have pulled off some kind of stratagem or some kind of ability that would have won you the game if you had known it's been there waiting for you, or if you've remembered that you had it. Well, that to me is highly frustrating. I want to play to the best efficiency as my army can play. I don't want to forget abilities that are detrimental to me, because then I'm like trying to fight with, injured for some reason. All right, some glaze medium. Put a little bit of glaze medium here, and what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our really brighter colors now. This is livery green from Game Color, mixed in with just a drop of Dowler and Rowney FW acrylic artist ink, and this time I'm putting in light green and just throwing it in there, making the flow go, and just really just blending a little bit onto there, just making sure that each pass that I put down, it's going to get a little lighter and lighter. Now, the idea behind this is that this rat ogre has been in sewers and stuff like that, and the radiation that's coming from sewers or wherever green warpstone contaminated area that they're coming from is on the floor, and their cloaks or their loincloths are dragging in it, making this saturated in that warpstone glow. I don't know. It was something fun, and I wanted to definitely try it. But speaking a little bit about gameplay, let's talk a little bit about gameplay while I paint this up. Stormfiends on the tabletop are one of the strongest elite units in this Skaven roster. They are shock infantry with a devastating range, phase, and power melee presence. You have weapon options including rattling cannons, which I have. That's just a large pool of dice. I love playing with a large pool of dice. That's why I like orcs. Just a whole fistful of dice and throw it out there. You know, even if you're hitting on a 6, you throw enough dice at a problem, it kind of goes away. So it's ideal for shedding infantry as well. So that's why infantry stopping Gatling cannon. You could also equip warp fire projectors, which are auto-hitting flamethrowers that can melt both hordes and elite units. You know, you got to have those flamers sometimes to get people who have, you know, very high armor. And then we have our wind launchers, indirect fire, which is always good because it ignores line of sight. And, you know, nothing's more annoying when it's like, I have cover. Oh, well, I don't need line of sight. There are the shock gauntlets, which are high damage melee option. I love running shock gauntlets simply because of that too. Rattling cannon in the middle can be a good strategy as well to use within the games. And then you have the grinder fist, which allows Stormfiends to deep strike into the battlefield from below. So a little uppy downy, but it's more like downy uppy. So their strengths are flexibility because you can have raw destructive power, but their weakness are their high points and cost. They are not cheap to take into an army. And the vulnerability is to focus fire. And the dependency on the position to support the heroes, because you're not really moving that far with them. So you have to know from the onset, where are these things going and how am I going to position them? Positioning will lose the game if you're playing with these Stormfiends in your army. Okay, so next up, what we are doing is we're going to do a little bit of edge highlighting and detailing and some kind of glowing effects within the weapons, because the weapons are black and I wanted to keep a simple color palette, but I also wanted to, you know, make it a little diverse. I'm going to include the black because there's a lot of gold on these things. So I'm going to include the black. And I'm also going to include the green, and keeping a very, very limited palette to get this done makes it a little easier because I kind of know what I have to pick from. Oh, I need a little bright spot here. Let me go to my palette. You know, I need a little darker spot there, right on my palette. Everything is there. And if it's simple to understand, it's even easier to execute when it comes to your painting plan. So, anyhow, just talking about their combat effectiveness, I'm going to talk a little bit more about gameplay while I paint these. And I'm going to go back and forth with that emerald green, just touching up areas. And I'm going to create that little bit of contrast. This is when I actually decided while I was painting that I would add this as a clear liquid. At first I was like, paint them green. And then it's like, where's it going to go from there? I don't know. And that's what I figure out when I do these tutorials. It's so much fun because as I'm painting and recording, I'm like, what decisions did I make? Oh yeah, that's right. I decided to go this route, or I decided to use that highlight, or try to change up the paint. And that's exciting because I'm making my decisions on the fly, and on the camera, you're seeing me make these decisions. Anyway, I'm going to glow these things up and you're going to see the process while I talk a little bit about gameplay. So many competitive Skaven players prefer a mixed loadout. Common to combinations include like 2 warp fire projectors and 1 shock gauntlet or grinder fist. The warp fire projectors are typically or especially strong because they automatically hit, bypassing all the modifiers. Shock gauntlets provide certainty in melee, helping Stormfiend finish off whatever survives the shooting phase. Stormfiends require support units to reach their full potentials. Notable synergistic heroes include Dark Warlock, which provides buff to shooting and can remain near the Stormfiends. Warlock Bombardier, useful for enhancing ranged attacks and providing magical support. Yeah, you need your Gracier, which offers teleports, rerolls, and powerful spellcasting tools. Stormfiends perform the best when teleported or deep struck into the ideal positions, enabling them to unleash overwhelming firepower before the enemy can react. So as I move from these highlights to certain other areas, I spend a lot of time blending on this one. I was really pushing my blending skills and wet blending skills when it came to this cloak. I wanted it to seem natural. I did not want to use an airbrush. So I'm trying to keep everything in one direction. In other words, my brush strokes are all going the same way. They're trying with the curve of the cape, and they're all going in the same direction. So this way, having that directionality, and wherever you lift your paintbrush is exactly where the most paint is going to be deposited, simply because of the capillary action of water and the way it works, which it wants to stick to the object and not the brush. You're going to see right now, I'm just going in there, highlighting, just seeing where I want to put little light sparks. Where do I want to draw interest? Keeping it black is the opposite of drawing interest. Highlighting different areas, the more you highlight them, the more contrast you develop, the more your eye kind of wants to go there. And I kind of want to highlight these guns. They're the major attribute of this unit, I think. This one is ignoring cover, so I believe that's the sound that these make. Horrible, gurgly rat noises with a and that ball comes at you. I like this guy, and I got to paint him to fruition so you can get an idea how I painted all the miniatures. All right, going up with a little more livery green. I do like that sparkle glow of the livery green being the highest highlight, and having that mid-tone of Warpstorm glow, and of course the base of Caliban green really makes a stark transition and really starts to pop. Now, you need to be careful with this step here because less is kind of more, and you could overdo it very easily. What I'm trying to do is put like soda pop bubbles, radiated soda pop bubbles inside there. All right, trying to get a little more edge highlighting done over here. Edge highlighting is, you need to have it. It just works on Citadel miniatures or Warhammer miniatures, whatever they want to call themselves. It just works. And it's designed to take it well. It's designed to take edge highlighting very well. And it's easier than a lot of true scale models. And it's a lot fun to paint. Like, I can be maybe a journeyman when it comes to painting. And I feel like I've made some major contributions to contrast when I edge highlight, especially those guns. Look how they glow. Again, they dull down once you put some of the paint on and it dries. When it's wet, it looks the most glossy. It looks the most best. But these are matte paints, so it's going to go down. It's not going to be as shiny. Here's another thing. Maybe I should try adding a little bit, just a little bit of gloss varnish when I do edge highlighting. I don't know. I don't know what that would do. I got to try it. Or you could try it at home and let me know. I think that would be cool. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you encounter if you try that technique. If not, that's okay. You follow this right here tutorial, and it'll definitely lead you to a little success when it comes to painting up your warband. And hopefully it helped. Stormfiends all day, every day. So when I move, I had trouble foreshadowing with a little bit of the chords and stuff that actually connect to this guy, but we're going to definitely talk about it. They do have a lot of exposed tubes and machinery in these models. which is delightful, but holding those tubes can be a little tricky to get them in the right spot, and I happened to lose one. I'll show you what I did as a remedy, and it worked out really well. Now, Skaven technology is unstable, and they needed to represent that in the miniature form, so doing and having all those wires exposed, cobbled together from scavenged material, so rust and grime and heavy contrasts will suit them well. If you want to dirty these down with dirty down rust and then wipe it off and have those streaks, or streaking grime works really well. If you want to get that, pitted kind of thing where it's been worn, definitely do that. That would be fun. All right, time for some gloss varnish. Let's have some fun with this. I've decided that the balls that these little cannons that my dude is shooting here, I don't know what to call him. Maybe you call him Ralph. Ralph the rodent. And I'm putting this gloss varnish, since I spoke about gloss varnish, I had to get into it. I'm putting it in on the balls simply because I'm going to use ink inside there, and I want it to flow into the recesses. So just trying that technique where you flow the ink into the recesses. Now, in hindsight, maybe the contrast would have been even better if I started using white ink first and then going over with the light green Dowell & Ronnie FW ink to get it in there. And I do have the white. So in hindsight, I could have made it even brighter, almost like if it was on fire. So if you want more contrast and you want to push this further, then after you gloss varnish these balls here, I don't know what else to call them, these launching cannon balls, once you do that, you can definitely take some white, after it dries, of course. You can definitely take some white ink, put that so it could fall into the recesses, and then come at it with a lighter green, which is fun. Some of the areas of the armor looked a little samey, so I put a little Balthasar green, some dark aluminum, and some emerald green, as you saw there, FW, Vallejo Metal Color, and Citadel Balthasar, and just touched areas to create interest in certain areas there and really make the armor pop a little more. It was well too samey. And getting the details with this butchery of color mixing, I don't know. I just like to play around with paint. I mix paints all the time and see what I come up with. I come up with one-of-a-kind, unique paints that I need to write down, because if I'm going to do the army and I want to include those colors, then I can have them. Good thing I have this tutorial that I can watch or rewatch to learn. Some people write down their paint recipes. Some people forget to write down their paint recipes. I'm in the latter camp, so I definitely have to record videos to let me know what colors I use so I can go back to them when I want to add to this army. Keep in mind, any nodes that you see that are warpstone, you got to paint them bright and glowing green, or maybe even teals. That would have been good too. But I kept it all monochrome with the color scheme. I wanted to keep it all one color. I think the gold itself was the red and the warm color, while the green expressed here, even though dark to light, was the cold color, and I wanted to create that contrast. But let's talk about the volatile power that is the warpstone. Warpstone is the backbone of Skaven society. It powers their machines, it fuels their magic, it mutates their creations. Stormfiends contain embedded warpstone generators that constantly push their bodies to supercharge these streams. This internal radiation slowly burns them out, though. Stormfiends are not meant to live long. They're weapons designed to expend themselves violently, almost like wrecking balls going in something that won't last. I don't know, just coming in and killing and dying. Kamikaze, maybe? But to represent this, Skaven, the playstyle is, well, chaotic brilliance. Skaven armies thrive on unpredictability. They overwhelm their enemies with speed and numbers and wildly unstable technology. Stormfiends represent the elite side of the Skaven warfare. Their clan rats clog objectives, and warp lightning cannons can explode at any moment. Stormfiends offer controlled, direct fury. Skaven strategy revolves around forcing enemies to do bad things or place things in bad positions. Stormfiends enable decisive plays, either from the depth of deep strike or pressure. Overwhelming firepower. It's there. It's a multi-use tool. So how do Skaven win games? Well, I'll let you know. I have been doing some research, thank goodness, and reading up about how Skaven plays. Skaven's victory often comes from activation control. Who fights first? That's one thing. Objective flooding. You have hundreds of rats and you want to take your objective. And then you have teleportation tricks where Uppy Downy comes in there and just coming out of the gnaw holes. And certain bursts of high damage, coming out, doing the attacks fast and furious. It's chaos and unpredictability. It is a game of dice, after all, but so are the rules. You don't know. Sometimes the rules say that you can't succeed very well on certain kind of abilities, or you have a poor chance of doing so. However, the payouts are great. But Stormfiends function more like a scalpel. In a faction that normally brings hammers and swarms, their job is to eliminate key targets or break open enemy lines, stop all those hordes that are coming from the opposite table, and kill out your leaders. So keeping in mind, let's get back to shading and highlighting. Applying washes brings out the recessed details, and Stormfiends benefit from darker, dirtier shading, emphasis industrial aesthetic sometimes. Mine are fab glorious, by all means. I was thinking of the custodian guards, with their shirt off. And I how they wear the shorts? Yeah. I was thinking like that because he has a loincloth as well. All right, now I'm going to paint up the wires, and I thought something interesting. I thought I was going to paint up do that contrast and let the glow go from one end to another. But then I thought maybe like a checkered pulse pattern would definitely work on these wires. So I was really excited to get to paint these like checkered patterns onto all these little wires. And it was a lot of fun to paint that up. I did want to make all the wires a little bit different using the same color. So if you're using the same color, you have to start thinking, okay, how can I visually make this interesting while using that one or two colors, the same side of the spectrum? Well, you have to look for contrast in different areas. You got to have your red Balthasar gold right next to your high livery greens and making it really pop, having that contrast that way. So just an experiment here, and I think it became a little cohesive with this. Speaking of which, like part of my army has that same kind of armor, and then the other part, the plague monks have the green vestiger. So having that combined here on the Stormfiend really ties my army together with the color scheme that I have chosen. So let's talk a little bit about the Under Empire. The Under Empire is a sprawling labyrinth beneath the mortal realms, filled with toxic gases, unstable tunnels, and endless warring factions. It is in these depths that the Stormfiends are created and tested. Many tunnels contain scorch marks, collapsed chambers, or remains of Stormfiends prototypes that malfunction catastrophically. Stability is not a priority in this Skaven engineering. Skaven lives are cheap, and that is their motto. So when painting up Skaven models, though, combine the organic and the mechanical elements, so this way the painting can be, it can be overwhelming because there's a lot of doodads and bits. Stormfiends, however, allow you to slow down and enjoy all that detail. These are little bigger models, not your infantry little guys. So you're not painting, I painted 80 of the little guys before I did. I did 40 Plague Monks and of course 40 more. A very, very large box, as we know. All right, hitting it off with some light green next, and we're going to have some fun with this. Now that the gloss varnish had dried, I'm going to try to keep this on camera where I got to try to touch it and see where it flows. But I decided that it wasn't working as well as I wanted to. So I just kind of brushed it over, and I figured I'll get a wet brush and just take over and take away, or detractive painting, where you're taking away paint and leaving some in the recess areas. So I decided to go back with those, and that worked pretty well. It looked like the chamber itself was glowing, and the balls, cannonballs in there were actually black, seething in this warpstone kind of weapon. And I think it came out really well. I definitely say you try this. And if you really want to make it pop again, throw that white ink first. Do this process with white ink first, and then pop this like really, really bright light green from FW ink in there. And I bet you it pops even more. I'm going to play around with that. I'm definitely going to play around with that. So the Skaven models in general. So they combine organic and mechanical elements, and painting them, really, you have a lot of bits, but enjoy that time that you have with it, because it's going to look epic on the table. I mean, it's coming out pretty nicely, I think, but maybe that's just me. I'm enjoying the process. Hopefully you're having luck with yours. But here's some key tips. For a lot of people, to make it even easier, embrace the grime and imperfections. Don't beat yourself over the head because you couldn't paint it exactly the way I painted it. I try to follow some painting tutorials myself sometimes, and I never get it exactly the way that the person that's painting it gets it done, simply because I always add my own little flavor to it. And feel free to do the same for you. So you can embrace the grime and imperfection and cover up anything that you messed up with some weathering techniques, or, and it actually enhances the realism of it. Mine is more cartoony. I like to have cartoony stuff. Reuse color tones to unify the model. Keep that simple palette. Now, if you don't want to go green, don't go green. If you want to go pink, go pink. If you want to go blue, go blue. You can go any color you want. The same ideas come into play, however. All right, time for a little bit of that leather. All right, leather brown and ruddy fur, ready to go. Ruddy fur is the way to go. And I am just going to hit all the leather bits as well as the fur bits. So getting to do that is fun. So focus on contrast between the flesh and the metal. That's an important thing. I went from warm metal, really reddish metal, to that green, and that's why it makes it look really pretty good. Also, I have that warpstone, the Wazdaka red, pink. It really gives that contrast to the green as well, because that's a red. A pinkish red, but it really does phenomenally. And I do like these speed paints when it comes to the Gribblies. Makes it a lot easier. I don't have to worry about, too much of the contrast. This stuff really works when it comes to the Gribblies and saves me so much time. I love this speed paints. Alrighty. So at this point, let's see. Next up, we're going to paint that little checkered palette. So it looks like little highlighted beams of light are going to go into the weapon and just wreak havoc. These are so fun, and me being able to pick these things apart and really just have fun with paint and just throw some on. I threw some on the wires and it kind of just like worked. It was all going to be like, I was going to paint them all bright green until I put a little dark area and I messed it up. And that little accident turned into something I think very cool, which is that going from light to dark wire. Oh my goodness. So I do that throughout the entire build and it is so much fun. And you know, every time I have an idea that comes to fruition, I'm like, whoa, this is better than I expected. And the reason why I paint so bravely is because if I make a mistake, all I have to do is put the base coat on the wire and try it again, or paint it something else. So it's really harmless painting. It's fun. If this hobby is stressful and not fun for you, honestly, I don't think you should be in the hobby. It's supposed to be something you enjoy. Remember that. It is a hobby. And if it brings you joy, continue it. And if it doesn't, walk away. Alrighty, so let's take a look at the Warscroll currently. Stormfiends have a 6-inch move, health of 6, a save of 4 up, and control 2. Rattling cannons have a range of 15, 3d6 attacks hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s with a rend 1 and a damage 1, which is fine. It is not average. The wind launchers have more attacks, at least steady attacks, I would say, with a range also of 15 inches, 4 up to hit, 3 up to wound, so that's pretty good. But the rend is 2, and the damage is D3, so the wind launchers itself is a more powerful weapon. And you're hitting consistently on 3, not really leaving it up to chance. Although, leaving it up to chance is kind of the forte of the Skaven. Go big or go home, right? And then you have the warp fire projectors. They can actually shoot in combat, which is a 10-inch range. 2d6 plus 2 to hit, plus 4 to wound. There's a big one. And rend of 2 with the damage 1. So I don't know. I would do the wind launchers. I think the steady fire would be better. But you never know. I like to do a whole set of things, but it seems like that would be, the wind launchers would be the most powerful option in my opinion. Again, I know how to play. I don't win that often, but I know how to play. You have the Doomflayer gauntlets, some of the melee weapons you want to put on there. Charge. That means in charge, you get a +1 to damage. You have an attack of 5, 4 hits. A wounding on 2s, rend 2, damage D3, which I like. You get that you get that 1 every now and again, but D3 damage is pretty good. You have Grinder Fists, which have 4 attacks, 4 up to hit, 2 up wound, rend 2, damage 2. There's that consistency. And that's why a lot of people use Grinder Fists, because there's a melee. It's that constant melee that's going to get you. Every time. You have the Shock Gauntlets, which I love as well. 4 attacks, hits on 4s, 2 wounds, 1 rend, but that consistent 2 damage. You have Clubbing Blows, which are attack of 3, 4 up to hit, 2 up to wound, no rend, damage 2. And the Clubbing Blows, well, I mean, they are what they are. Yeah, I guess if you lose your weapon somehow. So the battle profile is a unit size of 3. It's currently 250 points, so really well costed if you wanted to have that really heavy use of that. I wouldn't take too many of these because, you know, if you're playing a 1,000-point game, two units will get half your army. They're on 60 mil bases, and yes, they can be reinforced, which is amazing. 1/3 of the models must be armed with one of the following options. You have to have at least 1 warp fire projector or clubbing blows, wind launchers or clubbing blows. 1/3 of the models must be armed with one of the following as well: rattling cannons and clubbing blows and grind their fist. And 1/3 of the army must be armed with one of the following: Doomflayer gauntlets and shock gauntlets. So you do have that kind of like sorted out, where you're not running 3 of the same. You do have to have 1 of each option, which is really important. Anything else would feel a little bit like cheating. Okay, so right now, what I'm doing with my brushes, I'm trying to get that area to look like glass. And you're going to see me go back and forth with a lot of gloss varnish and some white paint, some stark contrasts. And I go back and forth until I'm happy. I just place the paint separated in the middle with the high to the low. It's a stark separation. Put little dots indicating bubbles. I even go in there and trace it outline up so it really looks cartoony. Again, that's my style. You don't have to use that. You can just blend as usual. All right, so let's talk about the Grind Their Fist tunnelers. They can use their Grind Their Fist to create underground tunnels. They have to declare to pick this unit if it is in the tunnels below, or includes any models armed with Grind Their Fist. So you have to do tell your opponent. Please do. No, none of that feel bad moments, please. The effect is that you can set up anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from the enemy units, that uppy downy part. It's passive. It's shock gauntlets. Its effect that each time an attack is made with this unit, the shock gauntlets score a critical hit. And that hit scores D6 hits on the attack unit instead of just 1. D6 hits on criticals. That is why I love the shock gauntlets. Make a wound roll for each hit, of course. The keywords are, it's an infantry, so you can take up to 3 units if you want to. It's Chaos, Skaven, Scryer, and Molder, so it has all of those keywords right there, which is pretty cool. So after a laborious labor of love, it's finally done. The Stormfiend is finished. Or is it? No. Now it's time for that all-important creative base so it can live on. All right. Finally, we are going to mask out, or actually just tell where I'm going to put the base by putting some putty and knowing where the base is. I do like to paint some stuff around the base, so this way I can indicate. What I'm using is Sharpie Creative markers here, something that's inexpensive that you can use, and it'll just let you know the footprint of where your model is going to be. So this way, when you put it onto the base, if you wanted to keep it leveled and not on top of a rock itself, then you can do so. It was actually quite easy to do. Next up, what we're going to do is we are going to set apart some pine bark, which I got here, and I put a little bit of Tri-Bond wood glue. It's a little thicker than white glue. I do like it more. It does hold things in place, and it does give a pretty tight bond, especially for the wood chips that I use within my base in order to get that natural stone look of slate. It does a wonderful job. I also use a lot of different other things like desert sand from AK Interactive to get some of the dirt down as well. But the first thing is first getting out down there. Now you can super glue that part if you want to, but it certainly has a lot of glue around it there. And I wanted to add some details to it. To the base. So what I'm doing is just gluing down these extra bits. And the bits we have here is, I know that we're going to have some rats on each one of these bases, these small little rats. And I just placed them on top of the rock. I think he's really good. I used some super glue in order to get him down. And I really think it's going to tell a little story. These little rats are just walking around everywhere. Now, I did not use a ton of rats, which I can. I do have a lot of rats, and I'm going to add them to the base. Obviously, having little hordes of rats is fun. I might do a gaggle of them later on as well. So what I'm doing is taking out bricks right now. I know onto bricks and making that some desert sand is going to give you some of that texture right there. Just make sure you don't go over the lines. So this way the miniature will fit there. That's one way to do it. If you want to outline that, make sure that your miniature actually has area to glue to the actual base, contact to contact base, if you will. Now, here's the thing. If you airbrush this, some of that plasticity can get lost. You do have to take away some of the paint, so this way you have glue to glue. And if you're going to use plastic glue to melt it onto the base, then that's definitely something you should do with this. Now, with all the GW changing base sizes with a lot of things, I don't know, sometimes using just your wood glue for your entire base is pretty good. And the reason why is that the entire base will stick together even if the base falls off of it. I'll say that again. The base can fall off and the entire scenery that you created on your base will separate from the base itself, because I've dropped the miniature and it's happened. And if you ever get into a situation, know that that base can come off and you can actually put whatever it is that you have on the base, put it on a larger base size. You can actually increase it by, just manipulating and adding more base structure to it. So you can actually change your base sizes quite easily if you're using either white glue or if you are using wood glue. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. All right, now I'm going to really play around with paint, some FW inks. I throw slops down on there. Here's some skin tone. I'm using the skin tone on the rodent because I'm not airbrushing it, but I want it to look disgusting and pink and nasty. And that's exactly what I achieved. Next up are these long wires. These long wires were tricky to really get in there. There's just a lot of them in there. But it was super fun because these little details is what really brings this to life. So going back and hitting those things even after the base is done was something I wanted to do. Again, some emerald green really down. And I lost one of these bits. So I'm going to put the one of the bit over there. And this one is way too long. I think it snapped. And part of it hit the rug of Never Find Again. Or the room of Never Find Again. So I'm going to use this electrical soldering wire to connect those. And as you can see, it came out pretty well. Like, it's about the same size. There it is. That is the wire. And it's all homemade. So, oopsie, I lost a piece. And it doesn't matter because you could just engineer some. This one's definitely giving some Doc Octopus things, vibes. And now it's finally time for the grand reveal. It's all done and it's glorious. They are truly some major fun to paint. And I took my time and I just enjoyed the process, even though there was a chord that was missing that I had to replace. But as you can see, no big deal to replace it. But man, these guys were so much fun. All right, I'll see you in the next video. And remember, paint every miniature to increase at least one skill. May your backlog get ever smaller.